All right, we're here at the All-Star break. We are 40 and 56. We only have one All-Star this year. Surprisingly, it's Eric Segura, who is someone we drafted, so that's good news. I was expecting it to be Shimizu instead, though. Looks like Holiday and Cruz are having good years with their new ball clubs. Carson Williams of the Rays also having a monster season in the American League. In the National League, here are your All-Star game rosters, and I'm particularly impressed by Riley Green, who's having a much better second year in San Francisco than his first. July 30th, we are getting into the trade deadline, and this team has played some really bad baseball lately. We've only won 4 of our last 13, and yeah, it's time to make this team better, at least in the long run, through the trade deadline, and we will have up to 3 trades to make. One thing I actually would kick around doing, even though it wouldn't be normal for a selling club to trade a prospect, would be to trade Luis Castellanos, and my reasoning being it's the 35 avoid Ks potential. One thing I've really noticed, and you're probably at home saying, yeah, it took you 7 seasons to notice this. A 35 or a 40 avoid Ks is not a good thing whatsoever. If you have a 40, you're still probably going to strike out like 200 times a season. If you have a 35, you're going to make a run at the single season strikeout record. And that's kind of where Castellanos is at least in terms of what our scout thinks of his perceived, projected avoid Ks potential. He has struck out 120 times in just under 300 minor league baseball plate appearances this year. I guess that's like a 40% rate or something like that. And that's what I think a 35 means. I think if you have a 35, I think you're going to strike out 40% of the time. We tried to get him in the dev lab to improve that. It didn't really take. So even though he's got great power potential, even though he's got, great framing and blocking, I would consider trading him because I think this is ultimately going to be an Achilles heel. And we're seeing it with guys at the big league level who have, closer to a 40. Cuvée, Petrie, Griffin has a 35 right now with a 40 potential. Those guys strike out so much, even if they have other positive aspects of their hitting approach, it's really hampered by the avoid Ks. Alrighty, I have cooked up my first trade of the trade deadline. Is going to involve Chase Young, whose contract expires at the end of this year. We're probably never going to bring him back. Seth Johnson does have one more year on his deal after this, and with the Orioles retaining 40%, it was going to be a pretty cheap deal. I think we're going to have to pay him a little under $5 million. Andres Armenta is a scouting discovery for us from 4 years ago. I always liked him because of the knuckleball. That's really it, and I think that's really the only appeal here, to be honest with you. He still has a 25 home run allowed on the 20 to 80 scale, so he just allows a ton of bombs. I know he's only 20. He's almost 21, though. Wilmer Flores, just a minor league signing who's been pitching for us in AAA. He's been fine. In return, we'll get Andrew Wiggins, who I think gives us a good lefty outfield bat, which is something we've been after. Chris Newell hasn't really worked in that regard, and I think this can give Connor Griffin a break. He's not going to have to get those starts in against the righties necessarily. That can be Andrew Wiggins instead. He even has a 130 OPS plus through his first few games with the Cardinals in the big leagues here. A rookie, 123 days Major League Service time, so I guess he will eclipse 1 year by staying with us. Tyler Pitzer is the main reason to get excited here because Tyler Pitzer, I think, is a very good pitcher. I think he's immediately about as good as Seth Johnson is, and with younger with more years of control. So that's what's exciting. He has a little over 2 years of service time, so I don't even think he would be ARB eligible. Yeah, wouldn't even be ARB eligible next year. I would actually be very interested in extending him, but you can see in 2029 and 2030, he has generally been a pretty good pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals, and we'll get a good young starter in return who has team control beyond the year of 2031, which is not something we really have in the rotation. So I'm happy with this trade. I think this makes sense for us. Nick Krall doesn't have a firm opinion about it. The one thing I guess I'll do is I'll see if they'll throw in another prospect. And the answer to that, it appears, is not really. Although I will point out, they have Wilmer Flores in AAA, so we're going to send the other Wilmer Flores. They're collecting all the Wilmer Flores. Now I understand this trade from their perspective, so we're going to go ahead and make it. All right, my second trade here is going to be very simple, very straight up. Jacob Reimer just has not worked for us ever since we traded for him. And it's what's so interesting is, look, with the Phillies, he was a 2-WAR player before we traded for him at the deadline. And if you look at this, and this is something that's kind of bothering me a little bit about the game, like the way they've scaled the ratings this year, the difference between 50 and 40 and 50 and 45, it just seems absolutely massive. And I know we play in a pitcher's park, I totally get that, but Jacob Reimer has 45 power, and he has over 300 plate appearances with us. and he's never homered once. So that's tells you the difference between a 45 and a 50, or maybe my scout is just totally wrong, but I don't think that's really the case. In return, we will get some power. We will get Danny Kennerly, who has yet to make his big league debut. He's still a prospect, but you can see from his minor league numbers, he's pretty good, right? He's having a pretty big year. He's got 1,200 OPS with AAA Round Rock. Obviously, that's in a high offensive environment, but he has power and he has avoid Ks, and that's basically the appeal. One thing with him is that he is fragile. However, I think by DHing him, we can sort of negate that effect. So that's going to be the plan. Kennerly's going to be our DH. Petrie's going to shift over to third in the absence of Young. That's basically my plan for the last couple months here. So we're going to go ahead and make this trade. Also, Reimer was going to be ARB eligible. That's another thing. So we are saving money in that regard. So let's go ahead and make this trade. So we're not going to trade Castellanos after all. Our third trade is just going to be Ceddanne Rafaela. He has a contract expiring at the end of the year. He was part of that trade we made with the Giants to take on some salary, hopefully make the team better in the short term. That trade really did not work, except for Cam Caminiti, but he was more of a long-term play anyways. So Rafael is going to go. We're going to have to cover the rest of his contract, which isn't really that big of a deal because it is the last 2 months of the season. The Nationals have no money. In return, we'll get Ben Ryan. So this is basically the replacement for Rafaela, if that makes sense. He's actually somewhat similar in terms of his ratings to Rafaela. Slightly worse defense and doesn't really have the base stealing capabilities, but, you know, young, cost-controlled, etc. You've heard it before. And then Tim Salcedo, I'm actually excited about this. It's just a young reliever who hasn't made his big league debut and thus has options. We don't really have that in AAA, so I'm happy about that. I don't know if Tim Salcedo is necessarily going to, feature prominently in the future of this big league club, but he's a good organizational piece to have. And so we'll go ahead and make that trade, and that will end our trade deadline. Ben Ryan does have a minor injury. It's a 1-week injury, and I'm just sort of hoping we won't have to add him to the injured list. He can stay here on the designated for assignment tab for the next 7 days and get ready to come back. But in the meantime, we are going to call upon Fabian Lopez, who was a minor league free agent signing, to play second base at least for the next week. So this is how we'll line up going into August. We'll have Andrew Wiggins lead off versus the righties. He'll sit versus the lefties. Griffin will come in versus the lefties and play center, kicking Baker over to left. We'll also have Kennerly at DH, and Fabian Lopez will play second until Ryan is healed from his injury. I've also gone ahead and put Pitzer into the rotation, and Caminiti is going to take over the highest leverage stopper role, so he's going to be essentially the Ronan Kopp role. And I'm excited about that. I think he's been a very good reliever for us, and it's a slight demotion for Arrighetti, who has a good ERA this year, but the homers are becoming kind of an issue. He actually has negative F4 because of the homers, so I'd be afraid of the ERA going up and him being in the highest leverage spots. August 2nd here, we are 44 and 65. I've never seen it this bad before, and the Brewers are a very good team based on their record, but we lose 21-4. There's your box score. Now is a good time to check on our prospects as we roll into August as well. The best news out of the Dominican Summer League is definitely David Escobar. Only 17, just signed him this past winter, but off to a terrific start there through 40 games. You can see his numbers right there, signed for $850,000. As far as the Arizona Complex League team goes, you're probably interested in Juan Bustillos. Not doing nearly as well there as he did in the Dominican the year before. Still remains the number 10 prospect in the game. Ratings still look pretty good to me. We'll just have to see. In terms of A-ball, you're probably interested in Castellanos. Here's Castellanos' numbers. Not too bad, just a lot of strikeouts, but pacing for nearly 30 homers as a good defensive catcher. It'll be a 3-WAR season. He'll stay there. In high A, Jared Forrest is starting. He was our draft pick. He has 10 games there. They haven't been very good. It's only 10 games. I'm not too worried about that. In Double A, we've got some interesting guys. Chris Greer is one of those. First rounder from 2026, not doing too well. Daniel Arana doing a little bit better, I would say, but he does have this fragile injury proneness that he's picked up. And I'm looking through his injury history here, and he has had some hamstring tendonitis last year and a fractured foot this year, missed some time. So that's a bummer. We like his defensive ratings. We need the offense to come up a little bit. He's probably a pretty high floor, low ceiling type of player, which seems to be who we've drafted in the first place. And then probably the best news, I'm moving Mauricio Albaran up to Double A, but he's been kind of killing it in High A. But honestly, sadly, the ratings potential doesn't seem that much higher than what it is right now. But he could be at least an interesting utility guy, a 5th rounder for us in 2029. So we'll check that out as the season goes along. My big bummer is Sergio Treviso. That ruptured tendon in his foot was a huge bummer to me because I was actually getting pretty excited about him. But yeah, that's our prospect check-in, and we'll move on with the season. August 11th here, we are 48 and 68. DeGrom is eligible to come off the injured list, and he is healed. My trick is going to be put him on a rehab assignment to the minors. That'll go for 30 days, and then by then we'll be into roster expansion, so we'll be able to call him up without sending anyone back down. That was sort of the goal there, and we will retain having a Cy Young Award winner on our team. Bryce Montes de Oca was a Rule 5 pick for us. He has stuck around for a few years now, but I think his time with the team is coming to a close. You can see just the stats not really good this year at all whatsoever, and we did trade for that Washington Nationals reliever who we could call up, so I think I'm going to option Montes de Oca down to the minors, and considering he's in his ARB years, we will probably non-tender him this November. And then in that corresponding move, it will be Tim Salcedo to make his big league debut in the bullpen. September 1st, we're 58 and 77. It is time for roster expansion, but we did get a scouting report from our scout, and I do want to point out my 6th rounder for this year. So my 6th rounder was done off screen, but that was Liddell Hungo, who is a college shortstop out of the University of Tennessee, Martin. Look at these ratings and look at these potential ratings, and he's doing just fine at A-ball to start his pro career. So we're going to keep an eye on him. But, with Orana sort of failing, this is a player that's somewhat similar to Orana, who may actually have a higher ceiling, who we got in the 6th round this year. So this could be a very nice draft pick. Not much speed and stealing to speak of. A long way to go in terms of his development. But you can see we got a very positive scouting report about him right here. With the roster expansion in effect, we are going to bring back Jacob deGrom. We're going to put him in the bullpen, and we'll also bring back Fabian Lopez. We're basically bringing back deGrom because we'll have to at some point anyways. September 8th, we are 61 and 81. Once again, there will not be a winning season in Oakland. Jacob Lopez has a oblique strain. He's been very good for us just in general since we picked him up off the waiver wire, but that is going to end his season a little bit prematurely. We will place him on the injured list. And I suppose the guy I'll call up will be Montes de Oca. September 14th, Noah Miller ready to come off the injured list. I think with his salary being what it is going into another year of arbitration and basically missing the entire season, and Ackerman and Guevara basically, replicating his production, we're just going to send him to do a rehab assignment in the minors to finish the year. And he is most likely going to be non-tendered as well. September 16th, we do get a milestone. That is 500 career wins. It's just that you would hope that it would take less than 7 seasons to get to 500 career wins. And deGrom, who is now 42, has a hamstring strain, so that's going to end his season as well. He missed most of it anyways, but we'll place him on the injured list. And the call-up is going to be Gunnar Hoglund. We have also been mathematically eliminated from playoff contention. That was, I guess, from a few days ago, but we are 63 and 89. I guess the only goal now is to not be the worst team in the American League. Our competition for that, believe it or not, is the Baltimore Orioles, and they have some talented players. They have Samuel Basallo, they have Kobe Mayo, they have Gunnar Henderson, they have Pete Crow Armstrong, but the team is just kind of fallen apart. The bullpen is an absolute disaster. Their closer is Christian Montes de Oca, who we traded for them, so I guess good trade on our part. But yeah, and the rotation isn't that great behind McDermott and Pepio. Actually, you know what? These guys have decent ERAs. They just don't have the greatest of ratings, I guess. September 22nd, we've lost 5 in a row, and Eric Ackerman's season is also going to end here in September, a little bit prematurely. I thought it was decent. I don't think there's much separating him and Guevara. They are both sort of, 4th and 7th round picks, respectively. They're glove first middle infielders. There's not much offense upside to speak of. I guess the corresponding move is to bring back Noah Miller. All right, last game of the regular season here. We are 65 and 96. We are going to have the worst record in Major League Baseball this year, and that is something that has not happened to us throughout the save, if I recall correctly. So that is a huge bummer. I know we had probably some higher expectations coming into this season, but we also, were able to make things a little bit more sustainable. I just think we also made things sustainably bad in the offseason. So that's a bad feeling. Let's see here. It looks like the playoff picture is basically set around the entire league. The Red Sox, Tigers, and Astros win their divisions. You can see the wild cards right here are the Rays, Guardians, and Rangers. And then the National League will be the Mets, Brewers, and Rockies. Brewers lead the way with 106 wins on the season. And the Diamondbacks, Giants, and Braves will grab wild card spots. We will finish out this season with a loss at Houston to give us a final record of 65-97. Definitely the worst team I've put together top to bottom. 594 runs scored in 162 games. That is just absolutely miserable. The offense was absolutely miserable. We strike out so much. Everybody strikes out so much. And then even with regards to the runs against and the ERAs here, which really aren't too terrible, we were 15th in FIP, so we had the worst FIP in the league. It's just we were bailed out by a really good defense, and so I don't even know if you can call that good pitching. We had some good ERAs, but I don't know if you can call that good pitching across the board. Top position player was Joshua Mears, although it's still a step back based on his 2029, which was excellent. Jane Melendez, kind of the same thing. I guess an all-right starting catcher, nothing to write home about. His expectation is bench player, though, so I wonder if we could get a starting catcher in over him. Chris Baker, this was his first full season. I don't know. I mean, it was 3 WAR. He's great defense. I was expecting more offensively. I guess it's fine. Ethan Petrie, a league average hitter in the end. He actually heated back up for us in the second half. He was miserable in the first half, but not as good offensively as he was his first couple years in Washington. So that was disappointing. Andrew Wiggins in that bit role since we traded for him. Hey, he was slightly above league average, I guess. Cuvée, huge disappointment. Huge disappointment. I don't even know what to say. I'm sick to my stomach. Danny Kernerly, who we traded for, not good either. It's not good. Not a good lineup. Connor Griffin didn't hit. Man. Pitching-wise, DL Hall was back up to his old tricks. He's really only had that excellent 2029 season in terms of his ERA. This year, the ERA was closer to 5. Shimizu had a 4 ERA. I would say he was our best pitcher this year. Pitzer was fine with us. He was putting up about the same numbers he was with St. Louis, actually more in terms of the strikeouts. I'm excited about him. I'm glad we got him. Eric Segura, a 4 ERA. He had a 4 ERA last year. Honestly, as far as pitchers that we've drafted, I think he's been the best. He was actually low-key our all-star, too. And then Frank Trejo, I don't know what to make of him. I mean, the ratings have come down. They've come back up. They've come down. They come back up. The home runs are a huge problem. He led the American League with 42 home runs allowed. Bullpen was pretty good. Cam Caminiti ended up sort of seizing the closing job in the end. I thought he had a perfectly fine season. Maybe we'll see him in the rotation. I don't know. Chase Lee, who we traded for, grabbed a stop roll late. He's not too bad. Honestly, the bullpen across the board was just fine. It wasn't amazing like last year, but it was just fine. All right, well, let's get on with the playoffs here. We have our AL Wildcard Series on the left, National League on the right. Let's get it started. And it's going to be a tie series going to a Game 3 in both of the American League Series. Braves and Giants do take a lead in theirs. And yeah, we've got Game 3s across the board. Astros and Rays will advance. The Astros won our division. I talked about the Tigers some this offseason. It's going to be the Braves and Giants to advance. We talked about the Tigers as being a scary team with a big offseason. We'll see. Astros had a big offseason too. They had Rodriguez and Holiday. Brewers, Giants, Tigers taking a lead. Rays and Red Sox tied up here. We're progressing through this division series, a best of 5. Tigers get the sweep. Giants lead 2-0. Rays have 2 games. Rays will advance. Giants will advance. So that leaves just the Brewers and the Braves left. That'll go to a Game 5. And it will be the Brewers advancing, the 106-win Brewers. Let's meet the final 4 remaining teams. The Rays are a team with a lot of power. Carson Williams hit 42 home runs. Junior Caminero, 34. Xavier Isaac, 45. I also want to point out, they traded for Bryce Harper this past offseason. Bryce Harper, he's on his last legs. He's basically ring chasing his 3 homers away from 500. He's got, I think, 1 more year on his deal left after this one. But yeah, that's Bryce Harper making his way over from the Phillies. They also have Aaron Nola, a former Philly himself, but the pitching as a whole hasn't been that impressive despite a lot of good name recognition here. Shane McClanahan not as good this year. Jacob Cozart has been such a beast in this save. Only played 100 games this year, but wow, he's a great catcher. We talked about the Tigers having a big offseason. They added Cade Horton via trade. He won 18 games, 3.47 ERA. That's a career best year for him. They added Ellie De La Cruz, got the big contract, 8 years, about a $40 million AAV, 6-WAR season for him. They have Max Clark, but I want to talk about Brady Harris because Brady Harris looks like an absolute superstar. He, coming into this year, was the number 10 prospect in the league, and look at what he's done. He has led the American League in WAR as a rookie. 41 home runs, elite defense in center field. They grabbed him 4th overall. They paid $14.8 million. That is way over slot. That's so much money for him, and yet it's worked out. He is an absolute stud for them. Is he going to do the Fred Lynn? Is he going to win the MVP as a rookie? We'll just have to see, but that's the Tigers. Brewers won 106 games, but if they're going to win the World Series, they're going to have to do it without some of their top pitching. Connor Phillips, who was the Cy Young Award winner last year in the National League, has elbow ligament surgery, suffered that right before the playoffs. Unfortunate. Jesus Luzardo going to miss this one. And Mike Ventimiglia, who is I don't know how to say it. We'll call him Johnny Clark because that's his nickname. That's a nickname that makes perfect sense for him to have. A really good rookie for them. He won't be able to return until after the League Championship Series, so that would be the World Series. Lineup-wise, really strong. This is just a really strong team across the board, even with the injuries. And yet this is an even-numbered year, so who's to say the 106-win Brewers won't be defeated by an 84-win Giants team with the power of friendship? They also have the power of Riley Green, who, 8.9 WAR. He leads the National League this year. He was their big free agent offseason signing. Not this past offseason, but the offseason before that. They have their closer, Brock Moore, who had 36 saves for them. They have Matt Scott. Interestingly enough, I don't know much about Matt Scott, but a 2025 first-rounder for them in real life. He is their ace. It's an interesting team across the board. The guy I'm actually a little bit jealous of is I wish we had Jared Zarek. This guy looks like he's going to be a very, very good player. All right, the championship series have started. The Rays will take game 1. The Giants will take game 1. Tigers tie up the series 2 apiece. The Giants take game 2. Unbelievable. This could be an upset in the making. Rays take game 3 over here. They take a 2-1 series lead. Rays lead 3-1, but the Giants lead 3-0 over the Brewers. It's 2030. They sweep, and they will face the Rays in the World Series. Let's see who's going to win that one. I'm going to have to skip forward a few days here before that series actually starts. Keep going. Rays take game 1. Giants tie it up. They take game 2. Rays take game 3. Rays take game 4. Ooh, potential clincher. The Rays in 5, the Tampa Bay Rays are World Series champions for the first time in franchise history. Bryce Harper has his ring, but it's going to be Jacob Cozart who grabs the World Series MVP. Guys, thank you for watching. I know it was a disappointing season. I will be back with a vengeance.